Alright, yes, I should have done videos on each episode of this season. I honestly don't know why I didn't. I even watched each episode at midnight at drop on my big screen TV. But now that it's wrapped up, it's about high time I made a video on this. So I'm gonna give you a spoiler warning. I'm gonna be talking about everything that happened this season, from start to finish, so you've been warned. After all, this is the way. The Mandalorian Season 2. God, what an awesome show. So let's just dive right in. At the end of Mandalorian Season 1, Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, was tasked with taking this child, this baby Yoda, and delivering him to a Jedi. So now Season 2 picks up, he is on that mission. The first episode of this season I thought was completely awesome. Chapter 9, The Marshal. We go back to Tatooine, which at first I was like, oh great, more fan service like episode 5 of the last season. But no. There's a story-based reason that we ever went to Tatooine in this show. Looking back, it's actually really smart, and it's no longer fan service. It makes sense in the story now. We meet Timothy Olyphant's character, Cobb Vanth, who has Boba Fett's armor, and you're like, that's not Boba Fett. What's going on here? So through his story, you learn that Boba Fett somehow got out of that Sarlacc pit, got separated from his armor somehow, and now it's in the hands of Cobb Vanth. So he's like, okay, help me beat the hell out of this crate dragon, and I'll give you this armor back. That crate dragon was awesome. I mean, that whole scene, that just made for a really explosive season premiere, complete with the aspect ratio change. I mean, come on. Watching that on a big screen TV with surround sound, dude, that is straight up cinematic quality right there. So they blow up this crate dragon, Din Djarin gets Boba Fett's armor back, and at the very end of the episode, you see none other than Boba Fett himself, played by Temuera Morrison, which makes sense because he's a clone of his father, Jango Fett, from Attack of the Clones. So you're like, holy shit, Boba Fett's gonna come into play later this season. I thought he was gonna come into play like in the next episode, but we don't see him for like another 5 episodes, which kind of bummed me out. But getting on to the second episode, Chapter 10, The Passenger, this episode actually really disappointed me, if I'm being honest, because it was just completely filler. Coming off the first episode of the season, which you got this huge crate dragon with the aspect ratio change and Boba Fett at the end, in this episode, he takes this frog lady as a passenger and he, like, escorts her to this one planet, or he's supposed to anyway, because she has information on another Mandalorian he might find. But instead, we crash land on this ice planet, and we're there for the entire episode. I'm like, this is completely sidestepping the main point, and it's all filler. We're trying to get off this ice planet. That ice spider was pretty cool, though. I'll give the episode that. Whenever there's a giant spider in something, I think it's cool, like Aragog or Shelob. So visually, it was pretty cool, but just story-wise, I could have completely done without this episode. In fact, if you're binging this season, you can skip this episode. All you gotta know is that Din Djarin's ship, the Razor Crest, gets wrecked. That's it. That's the only important thing about this episode. So moving on to the third episode, Chapter 11, The Heiress, we get Bo-Katan Kryze, played by Katie Sackhoff. Now, Bo-Katan is a character from the animated Star Wars shows, Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, neither of which I have watched yet, unfortunately. I did a little bit of research in regards to these characters, so I know a little bit about them. In fact, this episode is actually pretty important. It more or less tells you where the main direction of this entire show, The Mandalorian, is going. This is really the first episode that hints at that, because you have Bo-Katan. Apparently she is the rightful ruler of the planet of Mandalore, but she needs a certain weapon, the Darksaber, which, as we all know, is currently in the possession of Moff Gideon. So in this episode, Bo-Katan is like, alright, you help me out with this thing, and I can send you to a Jedi I know. So they raid that ship that's being captained by Titus Welliver, who's always a cool actor, and it was pretty cool to see him in this show. And you see Bo-Katan straight up, she's like interrogating him. She's like, where's the Darksaber? Moff Gideon has it. So you get the sense, you're like, okay, this purge they've been talking about, the purge of Mandalore. Moff Gideon went down there, stole the Darksaber, took it for himself. That must have happened sometime off screen, or maybe in one of the animated shows, I don't know. And now Bo-Katan is on this quest to get the Darksaber back. And at that point, I was like, oh, cool, alright. I think I see where this entire show is going. Because they're not going to leave that story just unresolved. More on that later, though, because that does come back in the finale, but we'll get there. And so Bo-Katan tells Din Djarin, alright, I know a Jedi, her name is Ahsoka Tano, she's on the planet Corvus, so head over there. And I was like, oh shit, here comes Ahsoka Tano! Again, I haven't watched Clone Wars or Rebels, but I know who Ahsoka Tano is, so I was pretty excited to see her in the next episode. Yeah, I had my hopes up a little too high there. Because Chapter 12, The Siege, we don't see Ahsoka Tano. The Razor Crest is still a mess, so we have to make a quick stop at Navarro. Which, okay, fine, it was nice to see Cara Dune and Greef Karga again, and it was also pretty cool that this episode was directed by Carl Weathers himself, but that doesn't stop this episode from being another filler episode. Because it is. Like, he lands on Navarro, and he's like, alright, my ship needs repairs. And so Greef Karga's like, alright, we'll fix your ship In the meantime, can you help us out with something? We need your help. And I was like, damn it, I knew it. Fuck. So we do this whole side quest where they're trying to eliminate the rest of the Empire from this planet. And I'm sitting there watching like, alright, I don't care about any of this. Can we get to Corvus already? Can we get to Ahsoka Tano? I want to get to cool shit. However, there is one thing about this episode that made me go like, alright, well, that wasn't filler. That was pretty important. And it's, of course, the part where they get to the laboratory and they see that message from Dr. Pershing where he's all like, Moff Gideon, we don't have a donor with a higher M count. We're gonna need that asset back. And we see all these experiments that they're working on. One of them really looks like Snoke. So again, you get the feeling, okay, the Empire is harvesting little baby Yoda's blood for something. People are guessing it might lead into Snoke in the sequel trilogy, which I think that's a pretty good guess. I don't know, we'll see where it goes, because a lot of fans are like, I don't want them to lead into that because they think the sequel trilogy is just bullshit. Me, I don't care. I love it all. Bring on the creation of Snoke. However though, when Pershing said M count, I was like, you said the word? How dare you? You broke the one rule! How dare you mention the M word? I'll never forgive them for that. Never ever. But the Razor Crest is repaired, so we are now off to Corvus. And now we get to it. Chapter 13, The Jedi. Holy shit. I love how this episode starts just giving you dessert right out the gate. Because the first scene, you see Ahsoka Tano kicking ass. I was like, oh yeah, alright. This is cool. Ahsoka Tano in this show is played by Rosario Dawson, who I thought did a killer job with her 2 white lightsabers. Again, I've never watched Clone Wars or Rebels, so I don't know why she has 2 white lightsabers. I thought she was a Jedi. Like, wasn't she a Padawan or something? Didn't she train under Anakin Skywalker? She hints to it in this episode. She's like, I've seen what fear can do to a fully trained Jedi Knight. To the best of us. I'm pretty sure she was talking about Anakin there. I don't know, one of the animated shows will fill me in on why her lightsabers are white. Besides, some other really important things in this episode happen, like us finally learning Baby Yoda's actual name, Grogu. Yeah, aw, little baby Grogu. And so that's what I'm gonna call him from now on. Just like I call the Mandalorian Din Djarin, because that's his name. I like to call characters by their actual names, you know? I know a lot of people are still gonna call Grogu Baby Yoda, because that's the name they are familiar with that character having, but not me. I like to go legit by their names. So if me calling him Grogu pisses you off, then you're just gonna have to deal with that. And we learn a little bit of Grogu's backstory too. You learn that he trained on Coruscant during the prequels era, and during Anakin's attack on that Jedi temple during Revenge of the Sith, Grogu was smuggled out of there by someone. I don't know who. I hope we learn someday. So Grogu has had some Jedi training, not a lot, but some. And so Din Djarin's like, alright Ahsoka Tano, can you finish Grogu's training? And Ahsoka Tano refuses, which I actually was surprised at, because she sensed fear in Grogu. And again, she's like, I've seen what fear can do to a fully trained Jedi Knight. I don't want to see that happen again, so no, I'm not gonna train this little child. And I was like, alright, well, at least we get some more time with little baby Grogu. But what about the Jedi training? Luckily, Ahsoka gives him another solution. Take Grogu to the planet Tython, place him on the Seeing Stone, he'll reach out with the Force to see if there are any other Jedi out there, and so that's where he goes. Oh, and you learned that Ahsoka is looking for Grand Admiral Thrawn, which I imagine is what her spin-off show is gonna be about, so that should be really cool. Again, that's why I'm pretty sure I should watch Clone Wars and Rebels now, so I can fully familiarize myself with this lore that I don't know. I'll touch more on this later. In chapter 14, The Tragedy, we go to the mystical planet of Chatsworth. Seriously, I mean, looking at those mountains, I was like, Lucasfilm, don't think that I don't recognize Stony Point, because so many things have shot there over the decades, and I've been there quite a few times myself, because it's right up in Chatsworth, that I recognize it pretty much instantly. It really took me out of it. I was like, this is no longer a galaxy far, far away. This is just a 20-minute drive from here. It looked like the planet Earth. It didn't look like sci-fi anymore. I mean, aside from the things that happen on it, which were completely awesome, by the way, because Din places Grogu on the Seeing Stone, he starts reaching out with the Force, and then next thing you know, you see the Slave One flying through the air. You're like, oh shit, here he comes. Yes, sir. Boba Fett is finally back. And it was so badass to see him again, because this is really the first time I got to go, oh, so that's why Boba Fett is so awesome. Yeah, we all know Boba Fett from the original trilogy, and fans were always like, oh, Boba Fett's so awesome. I was like, why is he so awesome? He doesn't really do anything in the original trilogy. He delivered Han Solo to Darth Vader. That's pretty much it. Other than that, I'm like, what makes him such a badass? Now in this show, we finally get to see what makes Boba Fett such a badass. Because he is awesome. When he gets his armor back, even before he gets his armor back, he's beating the shit out of these stormtroopers with his gaffy stick. And he also brought Fennec Shand with him. Ming-Na Wen comes back being the badass that she is. So yeah, that post-credit scene in episode 5 of season 1 of Mandalorian, that figure we saw approach Fennec Shand, that was Boba Fett. That whole episode in season 1 was to set this up. The fact that Fennec Shand is now in the service of Boba Fett, because Boba Fett found her dead in the desert and fixed her up with cybernetics. So now Boba Fett and Fennec Shand are palling around together like buds. Which, I'm not gonna lie, that's a pretty badass duo right there. Boba Fett and Fennec Shand, Yeah, man. Unfortunately, though, this episode is called The Tragedy for a reason. Because Grogu is stolen by these Iron Man, like, Dark Troopers. Like, first time I saw those, I was like, oh man, they're ripping off Iron Man. Just whenever I see a mechanical humanoid something flying around in the air, I'm just always gonna think of Iron Man, I guess. But it doesn't matter, though, because those Dark Troopers are still pretty badass. But Grogu is stolen by those guys, so now he's in the hands of Moff Gideon, and the Razor Crest is blown up, which that really sucked. That was home, you know? But hey, at least we have the Slave One now, which has always been a badass ship. So now Din Djarin and Boba Fett and Fennec Shand, they're gonna team up to go save Grogu. But first we gotta find out the coordinates to Moff Gideon's ship. So we go back to Navarro to find Cara Dune, because we need her help finding Mayfeld from last season, which will lead us right into Chapter 15, The Believer. Which, I'm not gonna lie, it was a cool episode, but after a couple watches I was like, nah, this is filler. It's another filler episode because, yeah, okay, we find the coordinates to Moff Gideon's ship, but I mean, this season could have done without that. It could have gone from, oh no, they took Grogu to let's go get Grogu back. But whatever, this episode was still pretty cool. I liked seeing Bill Burr as Mayfeld again. And actually, his lines in this episode are really good. He's talking with Din Djarin, he's like, so what's the rule? You can't take off your helmet or you can't show your face. There's a difference. And he brings out some other good points, to which I was like, wow, these are some of the best lines in the entire season. And throughout the season, you've actually seen other Mandalorian characters like Bo-Katan or Cobb Vanth, who technically wasn't a Mandalorian, and Boba Fett. You've seen them take off their helmets in front of people. And before the season even started, I actually had some theories about Din Djarin and his whole Mandalorian religion and beliefs, because I knew that there were Mandalorian characters out there who could just take off their helmets no problem. So my theory was that Din Djarin is pretty much what I call an orthodox Mandalorian, is that, you know, he follows the hardcore rules of the Mandalorian creed. He's really just devoted to that culture, whereas other Mandalorians out there don't take it as seriously, and so they ignore that rule and they can just take off their helmets whenever they want. And that's pretty much what they established in this season when Bo-Katan in the third episode was like, you're a child of the Watch, which was a group of Mandalorians that broke away from the normal Mandalorian society and want to reestablish the old ways, which to me translates as Orthodox Mandalorians. So now throughout the season, Din Djarin has slowly been warming up to the idea of taking off his helmet in front of people. Like in, I think it was the fourth episode of the season where he lifts his helmet in front of Grogu slightly to take a drink. When that happened, I was like, oh, okay, that just happened. So now in this episode, Chapter 15, The Believer, they're in this Imperial base, and Din Djarin is in front of this computer that's gonna give him the coordinates, but first it needs to run a facial scan. So he straight up takes off his helmet in front of everyone in the room. This is the first time he's taken off his helmet in front of people since he was a kid. It's a big deal. There's a line that Bill Burr said earlier in the episode where he's talking to Din, he's like, it seems like your rules change when you get desperate. And that's exactly what happened right here. Din Djarin is desperate to get Grogu back, so he breaks the rules of the Mandalorian creed. He takes off his helmet and freaked me out. It was awesome. And then they get the coordinates. Done. Oh, and I love seeing that seismic charge when they're escaping in the Slave One and those TIE fighters are going after him. Boba Fett releases the seismic charge, is all like, bam. I was like, awesome. Because that seismic charge was like one of the only cool things about Attack of the Clones, so I was happy to see it brought to Disney Star Wars. And I love the message that Din Djarin gives to Moff Gideon at the end, pretty much throwing Gideon's lines right back at him. You have something I want. It means more to me than you will ever know. I was like, all right, next episode's gonna be awesome. Before I get into the finale though, I'm gonna talk about Moff Gideon for a minute, because Giancarlo Esposito as Moff Gideon I think is a fantastic, awesome Star Wars villain. He just has that presence that you got from original Darth Vader. You know, he's serious, he takes control of every room he's in, he chews scenery. In fact, I would go so far as to say he's probably the best Star Wars villain since OG Vader. I mean, really think about it. He is. Alright, now we are in the season finale. Chapter 16, The Rescue, which goes off pretty much without a hitch. They get to Moff Gideon's light cruiser, Din Djarin gets Grogu back, but not before Moff Gideon just goes apeshit on him, fighting him with the Darksaber, which is a pretty sweet fight. Din is fighting him with that Beskar spear, and Gideon's putting up a pretty good fight, but ultimately Din Djarin does win, which makes for a problem that I'll get to later. Because now these Dark Troopers are being deployed, and you see in this episode that these Dark Troopers are not to be messed with. One of them beat the shit out of Din Djarin earlier in the episode, so now we're on the bridge, Moff Gideon is down, these Dark Troopers are coming, they're gonna kill us all, but then we see it. A lone X-Wing flies into this cruiser, and a Jedi comes out and just starts laying waste to the Dark Troopers. We're talking, this guy is immaculate, he's just going to town. And my first guess when I saw that lone X-Wing flying in, I was like, is that Luke? Sure enough, you see his green lightsaber, you see one of his hands is gloved, and I am just thoroughly shitting myself. I was sitting there all like, it's Luke Skywalker! I couldn't believe my eyes! And so he clears out the Dark Troopers, he comes into the bridge, he takes off his hood, and it's young Luke Skywalker, which I actually can't believe they got Mark Hamill back, which means they had to de-age him by a lot. And I don't get it. When Marvel uses de-aging technology, it looks pretty good most of the time. But whenever Star Wars does it, it doesn't look perfect. It doesn't look bad right here. In fact, it's probably the best de-aging job they've done so far. I was like, yeah, it looks like Return of the Jedi era Luke Skywalker, and it sounds like him too. I think they did a pretty good job here. And if you listen closely to the music that's playing there when he takes off his hood, you'll notice that Force theme, that original Force theme from John Williams. I loved hearing it again, man. That hit home. Which you also notice in Chapter 13, The Jedi, when Ahsoka mentions Yoda, you hear in the background score, ever so subtly, you hear a little drop of Yoda's theme. I actually didn't even notice that until my second time watching the episode, because it was so subtle, but I loved it. The music in this season, once again written by Ludwig Göransson, is just fantastic. I love it all. The Mandalorian theme, Boba Fett's theme, Grogu's theme, it's all great. But anyway, getting back to Luke, not only does he come back, but also R2-D2. Cause why not? R2-D2 comes strolling in, he's like, oh my god, I've seen one of those aliens before. Luke, you gotta come take this guy. I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much what he said. What, you don't speak binary? And so then we get to this really touching goodbye scene. Din Djarin takes off his helmet in front of Grogu for the first time, and Grogu reaches out and touches his face. I was like, oh man, I'm feeling this. I didn't tear up or cry, but I definitely felt the emotion. And so that's where the episode ends. Luke Skywalker takes Grogu away, and you're left with a couple questions. Like, okay, season 3 is gonna have no more Grogu anymore, presumably. So the writers are gonna have to come up with something to keep the audiences engaged. We still have the bit with the Darksaber and Bo-Katan. That's gotta go somewhere. You can't just leave that unresolved. Bo-Katan is probably gonna want to fight Din Djarin because the Darksaber has to be won in battle in order for you to take it and be worthy of the throne of Mandalore. And Bo-Katan doesn't know Din that well, so I'm pretty sure there's gonna be a big fight in season 3, I can imagine. But then there's a post-credit scene in the finale. We go to Jabba's palace and we see that Bib Fortuna has taken up Jabba's throne. And then Boba Fett comes down, kills everyone there. He's like, alright, bitches, this is my palace now. And Fennec Shand is right there at his side. I was like, great, this is awesome. Boba Fett's revenge. And then it cuts to black and you see text on the screen, The Book of Boba Fett, coming December 2021. I was like, oh, holy shit, here's a show they didn't announce in Investor Day because they wanted to save it for this. That's genius. So yeah, we got another Star Wars show coming to Disney Plus in about a year from now, The Book of Boba Fett, starring Tamira Morrison and Ming-Na Wen. They revealed today that it's actually filming right now. And once they finish wrapping filming on that, they're gonna start filming Mandalorian Season 3. So yeah, I'm super excited. In the end, The Mandalorian Season 2 was completely awesome, except for the filler episodes. I hated those, at least Chapter 10 anyway. But the episodes that were not filler were completely awesome. There are a couple of things we need to tie up for Season 3, like the Darksaber bit, and what about the laboratory with the cloning? What exactly is the Empire doing with Grogu's blood? We gotta find out where that's going. Is it leading to Snoke? And how is it going to tie in with all these other Star Wars shows that are coming to Disney Plus? Ahsoka, Rangers of the New Republic, The Book of Boba Fett. All these other shows are coming and they're gonna culminate in a climactic crossover event. Just what a time for this Star Wars fan to be alive and young. I can't wait. So The Mandalorian Season 2, have you watched it yet? Have you binged it? What did you think about it? What was your favorite episode? Where do you think Season 3 might go from here? How do you think it'll tie in with the other upcoming shows? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe.